Commander Deho stood on the bridge of his ship and looked out at the stars. He had been protecting this sector of space for 15 years now. His job was simple but important. He kept the children safe. The galaxy was a dangerous place. Wars happened all the time between different alien species. When planets burned and cities fell, the children were left behind. Nobody wanted them. Nobody cared about orphans from enemy worlds. Nobody except humans. Deho's fleet protected the Sanctuary Network. It was a series of space stations orbiting a beautiful green planet called Kepler 442b. Each station was home to thousands of children from across the galaxy. They came in all shapes and sizes. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some could fly. Some breathed different air than humans. But they all needed the same thing. They needed someone to care about them. On the largest station, Director Myung walked through the corridors. She was an old woman now, but her eyes still sparkled with warmth. Children ran past her laughing and playing. A small Vrelian girl with blue skin tugged on her sleeve. "Grandmother Myung, look what I drew," the girl said. Her name was Taeri. She held up a picture of a human woman holding hands with a Vrelian child under a bright sun. Myung knelt down, her old knees protesting. She smiled at the drawing. "It's beautiful, Terry. Is that you and your teacher?" Terry nodded. "Teacher Bora says we're family now." She says family isn't about looking the same. It's about loving each other. "Teacher Bora is very wise," Myung said. She hugged the little girl and stood up slowly. Around her, the station buzzed with life. Human caretakers taught math to young aliens. Doctors healed sick children. Cooks prepared meals that worked for 20 different types of biology. This was what humanity did best. They cared. But not everyone in the galaxy thought this was good. The Zarkish Empire watched the human orphanages with growing anger. The Zarkish believed in power and conquest. They believed strong species should rule weak ones. They had built their empire on the backs of slaves. Many of the children in human care came from species the Zarkesh had conquered. When these children grew up in human stations, they learned something dangerous. They learned they deserved freedom. They learned they were equal to anyone else. They learned to question why the Zarkesh should rule them. This made the Zarkesh leaders nervous. An empire built on lies about superiority cannot survive when those lies are challenged. The children raised by humans would grow up to be a problem. They would demand rights. They would refuse to be slaves. They would remember that humans had shown them another way to live. So the Zarkesh made a decision. They would solve this problem permanently. They would show humanity and the whole galaxy what happened when you challenged the natural order. They would make an example that everyone would remember. 300 Zarkesh warships appeared at the edge of the Kepler system. Their weapons were charged. Their shields were up. They came not to talk but to destroy. Captain Junho was the first to detect them. He sat in his small defense frigate and stared at his screens in disbelief. 300 ships. His entire fleet only had 43 vessels. They were not warships either. They were patrol boats and defense frigates designed to stop pirates and debris, not fight a full military fleet. He opened a communication channel immediately. "This is Captain Junho of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered protected space. State your intentions." The Zarkesh admiral appeared on his screen. The alien's face was cruel and confident. "Human, we have come to correct a mistake. Your orphanages are an insult to the natural order. You teach slaves to think they are free. You teach conquered species to believe they are equal. This ends today." Junho felt his heart turn to ice. "These are children. Innocent children. What threat could they possibly be to your empire?" The admiral laughed. "Today they are children. Tomorrow they will be revolutionaries. We will not make the mistake of letting them grow up. Evacuate your personnel from the stations. Transfer all children to our custody. You have 1 hour to comply. If you refuse, we will take them by force. Resist us and we will destroy everything." The communication ended. Junho sat in silence for a moment. Then he activated the emergency broadcast to all human vessels and all sanctuary stations. "This is not a drill. The Zarkesh are here in force. They want the children. Prepare for evacuation procedures. All combat vessels form defensive positions." On the main station, Myung received the alert. She looked around at the children playing, learning, living. She thought about Terry and her drawing. She thought about the thousands of faces that trusted humans to protect them. She thought about the promises humanity had made. Every child in these stations had already lost everything once. Their homes were destroyed. Their families were dead. They had been scared and alone until humans found them. Humans had promised them safety. Humans had promised them a future. Could they now hand these children over to an empire that would make them slaves? Could they break that promise? Myung walked to the communication center. She composed a message to the Zarkesh admiral. Her hands shook as she typed, but her words were steady. The children under our protection are not cargo to be transferred. They are not property to be claimed. They are living beings with rights and futures. We will not surrender them to slavery. If you want them, you will have to go through us. She sent the message. Then she activated the station-wide intercom. All staff, this is Director Myung. Begin evacuation of non-essential personnel. All caretakers, teachers, and medical staff, you may leave if you choose. No one will judge you. This is not your fight. She waited. She expected many would take the escape ships. No one could blame them. The Zarkesh fleet was overwhelming. This was suicide, but her communication panel filled with responses. Not one person chose to leave. The teachers, the doctors, the cooks, the janitors, every single human on every station sent the same message. They would stay. They would protect the children, even if it cost them everything. Daeho received reports from all his ships. Every captain reported ready for battle. Every crew volunteered to hold the line. They all knew the math. 43 ships against 300. It was hopeless. But between them and the children there would be no path. The Zarkesh would have to go through them. He opened a channel to his fleet. All ships, battle stations. Our mission is to protect those children for as long as possible. We will give them time to evacuate as many as we can. We will show the Zarkesh that humanity does not abandon those under our protection. It has been an honor to serve with you all. The Zarkesh admiral watched the human fleet position itself between his armada and the stations. He found it amusing. 43 tiny ships against his war fleet. Humanity was known for this kind of foolish sentimentality. They would die for creatures that weren't even their own species. He decided to teach them a lesson. He would destroy one station first, just one. When the humans saw their precious children burning, they would surrender the others. He chose Station 7, home to 40,000 children and 8,000 human caretakers. It was large enough to make the point clear. On Station 7, Director Yejin gathered the children in the Central Assembly Hall. She told them everything would be okay. She told them stories to keep them calm. Around her, human caretakers held small hands and sang soft songs. They knew what was coming. They chose to spend their last moments making sure the children felt loved, not afraid. Captain Junho positioned his frigate directly in front of Station 7. 11 other ships joined him. They made a wall of steel and courage between the children and the Zarkesh guns. They knew their shields would not be enough. They knew their weapons could not stop what was coming. But they could at least try. They could show the galaxy that some things were worth dying for. The Zarkesh admiral gave the order. His flagship's main cannon charged with terrible light, the weapon that could crack a planet aimed at Station 7. Junho closed his eyes and thought of the children he had played with during his shore leave. He hoped they felt no pain. The Zarkesh fired. The light was brighter than 1,000 suns. Station 7 simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, full of life and hope. The next moment, there was only fire and debris. 40,000 children died instantly. 8,000 human caretakers died with them, their last acts shielding children with their own bodies, though it made no difference against such weapons. Captain Junho and his frigate vanished in the same blast. The 11 ships that had positioned themselves as shields were torn apart like paper. Brave crews who had volunteered to stand between danger and innocence were gone in a flash of light. Their sacrifice bought nothing. The Zarkesh weapon was simply too powerful. On the main station, Myung stood at the observation window. She watched Station 7 die. She had worked with Hyejin for 20 years. They had shared meals, shared stories, shared the joy of watching broken children learn to smile again. Now Hyejin was gone. All those children were gone. Around her, the other children screamed. They had just watched their friends die. Young Terry collapsed, sobbing. She had friends on Station 7. They had played together just yesterday during the station link-up recreation time. Now they were gone. Myung felt something break inside her. For 30 years, she had dedicated her life to peace. She had believed that showing compassion would eventually teach the galaxy a better way. She had believed that caring for the orphans of war would help end war itself. She had been wrong. The Zarkesh Admiral's face appeared on every screen across the Sanctuary network. He looked pleased with himself. You see what your defiance costs? Station 7 is destroyed. You have 45 minutes to begin evacuation procedures for the remaining stations. Transfer the children to our ships. Obey and the rest will be spared. Refuse again and we will destroy another station, and another, until you learn your lesson. Daiho stood on his command bridge. He had just lost 13 ships and thousands of crew members in an instant. Good people, brave people. People who believed in something bigger than themselves. The math was now even worse than before. He had 30 ships left against 300 Zarkesh warships. His communication panel lit up with incoming messages. Earth was calling. The Terran Senate was calling. The United Fleet Command was calling. They all wanted to know the same thing. What was he going to do? Would he surrender the children to save the remaining stations? Would he continue fighting, a battle he could not win? Daiho looked at the burning debris that had been Station 7. He thought about Captain Junho, who used to volunteer in the orphanages during his leave time. Junho would spend hours teaching Tholian children about Earth's oceans, even though Tholians came from a desert world and found water fascinating but terrifying. Junho had been patient and kind. Now he was dead. Daiho thought about Director Hiejin, who sent him weekly reports about her students' progress. She had been so proud when a traumatized Nexari child had finally spoken his first words after 2 years of silence. She had dedicated her entire life to healing the wounds of war. Now she was dead, murdered for daring to show children that different species could coexist in peace. He thought about 40,000 children who would never grow up, never fall in love, never achieve their dreams, never get the chance to make the galaxy better, murdered because they represented hope in a galaxy built on cruelty. Something cold settled into Daiho's heart. For his entire career, he had been a peacekeeper. He had resolved disputes through negotiation. He had shown restraint even when provoked. He had represented the best of humanity, their belief that problems could be solved without violence. But there were some problems that could not be solved with words. There were some evils that only understood force. He opened a channel to all Terran vessels in every system. His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. This is Commander Daiho, Authorization Delta Zero. All human ships, all human stations, all human colonies receive and acknowledge. The Zarkesh Empire has just murdered 48,000 unarmed civilians, including 40,000 children under our protection. This was not an act of war. This was an act of genocide. Humanity is hereby activating Protocol Lionheart. We are going to war. Total war. We will dismantle the Zarkesh Empire. We will hunt down every leader who ordered this attack. We will accept no surrender until justice is served. This is not a request. This is not a debate. This is what happens when someone murders our children. Confirm receipt and begin war mobilization immediately. Across human space, the message was received. On Earth, the Terran Senate convened an emergency session. There were some voices that called for restraint, for diplomacy, for trying to negotiate, but they were drowned out by the majority. Humanity had tried peace. They had tried compassion. They had tried being the better example, and the galaxy had responded by killing their children. The vote was unanimous. Earth was going to war. Ambassador Nari stood before the Galactic Council. She was a small woman, but her presence filled the chamber. The assembled representatives of 100 species watched her with mixed emotions. Some felt sympathy, some felt concern, some felt amusement that humanity thought they could threaten anyone. Nari's voice was cold as ice. For 200 years, humanity has served this galaxy. We asked for no payment. We demanded no territory. We sought no power. We simply took in the children that your wars created, the orphans you abandoned, the refugees you ignored. We gave them homes. We gave them education. We gave them love. We asked only that you leave us in peace to do this work. She paused and looked around the chamber. Today, the Zarkesh Empire murdered 48,000 people. 40,000 of them were children, Children we had sworn to protect. Children who trusted us to keep them safe. The Zarkesh did this to send a message, to show the galaxy that compassion is weakness, that mercy is foolishness, that might makes right. Her voice grew harder. Very well, message received. Humanity is done being your nanny. We are done cleaning up your messes. We are done showing mercy to those who have none. The Zarkesh Empire wanted to see what humanity looks like without compassion. They are about to find out. We are coming for the Zarkesh. We will dismantle their empire piece by piece. We will free every slave. We will destroy every warship. We will tear down every monument to their cruelty. And we will not stop until every single leader who ordered this attack faces justice. She looked directly at the Zarkesh representative who sat smugly in his seat. We will not accept your surrender. Not now. Not until we are ready. You wanted a war? You have one. And you are going to learn why humanity conquered its own planet before ever reaching the stars. You are going to learn why we chose to bury our capacity for violence. You are going to learn that the species that cares most deeply also fights most fiercely when what they love is threatened. The Zarkesh representative laughed. You have perhaps a few hundred ships total. We have fleets numbering in the tens of thousands. You are one species. We command an empire spanning 1,000 systems. What can you possibly do to us? Nari smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You're about to find out. Any species that aids the Zarkesh will share their fate. Any species that interferes will be treated as an enemy. We suggest everyone else stay out of our way. The gardeners are done. The warriors have awakened. She left the chamber. Behind her, the council erupted in debate. Some species thought humanity was bluffing. Others thought they were being emotional and foolish. The Vrelian representative, however, looked worried. He had studied human history. He knew what humans had done to each other before they unified. He knew the capacity for violence that lay beneath their peaceful exterior. He stood and addressed the council. I recommend we heed their warning. Humans do not make threats lightly. They spent centuries learning how to kill each other efficiently. They built weapons capable of destroying their own planet. They fought wars that killed millions. Then they chose to stop. They chose peace. But choice is not the same as inability. They did not forget how to wage war. They simply decided not to. That decision has now been reversed. Most of the council ignored him. They could not imagine peaceful, compassionate humanity as a threat. They had seen humans negotiate, compromise, and retreat from conflicts for 2 centuries. They thought they knew what humanity was capable of. They were wrong. On Earth, something ancient stirred. The factories that had built colonies and hospitals began retooling. The shipyards that had constructed exploration vessels switched to new designs. The research centers that had developed medical technology began working on other projects. Projects that had been mothballed for 200 years. Projects that had been kept in reserve, just in case humanity ever needed them again. Deep in hidden systems, automated facilities came online. These were the insurance policy humanity had built when they first reached the stars. Surrounded by unknown alien species, potentially hostile, humanity had prepared for the worst. They had built massive shipyards in secret locations. They had stockpiled weapons and resources. They had created contingency plans for total war. Then, as the decades passed and they found their place as peacekeepers, these facilities had been put to sleep. Their existence was classified. Most humans did not even know they existed. Now they woke up. The automated systems began their work, building ships. Commander Deho did not wait for reinforcements. He had 30 ships left. The Zarkesh had 300. By all military logic, he should retreat, wait for Earth's forces to arrive, preserve his fleet for a battle he could actually win. But Deho was not thinking about military logic. He was thinking about Station 7. He was thinking about the 45 minutes the Zarkesh had given before they would destroy another station full of children. He would not give them 45 minutes. He would not give them 45 seconds. All ships, attack formation, he ordered. Target their command vessel. We're going to cut the head off this snake. His officers looked at him in shock. This was suicide. But they saw the look in his eyes and understood. Sometimes there were things more important than survival. Sometimes you had to show the enemy that there was a price for their cruelty, even if you could not win. The 30 human ships accelerated toward the Zarkesh fleet. The aliens watched with amusement. Such a small force against their armada. It was pathetic. The Zarkesh admiral ordered his ships to destroy the humans quickly, so they could get back to the business of clearing out the orphanages. But something strange happened. The human ships did not fight like the defensive patrol boats the Zarkesh had expected. They fought with precision and fury. Every shot from human weapons found critical systems. Every maneuver exploited weaknesses in Zarkesh formations. Boarding pods launched from human ships and attached to Zarkesh vessels, cutting through hulls with frightening efficiency. The truth was simple. Every human ship had always been a warship. The defensive systems were throttled weapons platforms. The patrol vessels were actually heavily armed frigates running at minimal power. For 2 centuries, humanity had flown through the galaxy in what were essentially military vessels. But they had never activated their full capabilities. They had chosen restraint. That restraint was now gone. The Zarkesh lost 15 ships in the first 10 minutes. The admiral stopped laughing. He ordered more vessels to engage the humans. Surely numbers would overwhelm them. But the human ships seemed to know where every Zarkesh vessel would be before they got there. They anticipated maneuvers. They exploited every tactical mistake. They fought like they had studied Zarkesh military doctrine for years and knew every weakness. Because they had. Humanity had spent 2 centuries watching the galaxy's wars. They had analyzed every battle, every tactic, every strategy. They knew how the Zarkesh fought. They knew how every major species fought. They had simply never used that knowledge before. Now they unleashed 200 years of military intelligence all at once. More Zarkesh ships fell. The human vessels seemed to dance through space, never where the aliens expected, always striking where it hurt most. Boarding parties stormed Zarkesh bridges and engineering sections, targeting officers with brutal efficiency. Human soldiers fought with a cold professionalism that terrified the Zarkesh. These were not the peaceful caregivers they had imagined. These were trained killers who had simply chosen not to kill. Until now, the Zarkesh fleet began to panic. They had lost 80 ships. 80 ships to 30 human vessels. It was impossible. The admiral ordered a retreat. His fleet broke formation and fled the Kepler system, leaving their dead behind. Deho watched them go. He had lost 7 more ships in the battle, but they had driven off an enemy fleet 10 times their size. It should not have been possible. But humanity had always been more dangerous than they appeared. They had simply hidden it well. He opened a channel to the remaining stations. "This is Commander Deho. The Zarkesh have retreated. We have driven them off. But they will return with more ships. We need to evacuate as many children as possible. All civilian vessels in the sector are hereby commandeered for evacuation duty. We're getting our children to safety." The evacuation began immediately. Cargo ships, passenger liners, mining vessels. Every ship in the sector converged on the sanctuary network. Humans loaded children aboard, prioritizing the youngest and most vulnerable. They worked with desperate speed. The Zarkesh would return. It was only a matter of time. While the evacuation continued, something was happening across human space that would change everything. Admiral Soman stood in a command center deep beneath Earth's surface. Around her, holographic displays showed the status of humanity's military mobilization. What she saw would have shocked anyone who believed they knew humanity's capabilities. Hidden shipyards and dead systems were coming online. These facilities had been built 200 years ago, when humanity first encountered alien species. Back then, humans had been cautious and prepared for the worst. They had built massive automated shipyards in secret locations, capable of producing warships at incredible rates. As the decades passed and humanity found its role as peacekeepers, these facilities had been mothballed but never dismantled. They were insurance just in case. Now the insurance policy was being cashed in. The automated systems were building ships. Not just a few ships, thousands of ships. The shipyards had been waiting for 2 centuries, maintaining themselves ready to activate at a moment's notice. Within 1 week they had produced 5,000 warships. Within 2 weeks, 10,000. The numbers kept climbing, but they were not building new ships from scratch. That would take too long. Instead, they were converting existing vessels. Every cargo hauler in human space was being refitted with weapons and armor. Every mining ship was becoming a missile platform. Every civilian station was being armed. Humanity's entire economic infrastructure was pivoting to a single purpose: war. The galaxy watched in confusion as human ships began appearing in greater and greater numbers. It did not make sense. How could one species build so many ships so fast? Where were they coming from? The numbers seemed impossible. No known economy could sustain this level of production. But the galaxy did not understand human industrial capacity. Humans had learned how to mass-produce everything from food to starships. They had built colonies on 1,000 worlds, each one a miniature Earth with its own factories and shipyards. When all of that capacity turned to war production simultaneously, the output was staggering. The Zarkesh Empire watched with growing concern. They had expected to fight a minor species with limited resources. Instead, they were facing an industrial machine that seemed to have no limit. Zarkesh intelligence agencies scrambled to understand where all these ships were coming from. Their reports grew more alarming by the day. Meanwhile, humanity struck back in ways the Zarkesh had not anticipated. Young-Ho sat in a dark room surrounded by computer screens. He was a cyber warfare specialist, one of thousands humanity had trained but never deployed. Human hackers had spent 2 centuries learning alien computer systems, studying their security, finding their vulnerabilities, all for hypothetical scenarios that they hoped would never happen. Now those scenarios were real. Young-Ho and his team launched digital attacks against Zarkesh infrastructure. They infiltrated military networks, turning automated defenses against their creators. They hacked financial systems, draining Zarkesh war funds. They exposed military deployments, giving human forces perfect intelligence on enemy movements. They turned the Empire's own technology into a weapon against it. The Zarkesh had never experienced cyber warfare at this level. Their networks collapsed. Their communications went dark. Their automated systems turned hostile. Planets found themselves cut off from the Empire, unable to coordinate defenses. It was chaos. While Young-Ho fought in cyberspace, Commander Hyun led teams deep into Zarkesh territory. These were special operations soldiers, trained for missions that officially did not exist. They did not strike military targets. That would come later. Instead, they hit slave processing centers, freeing millions of captives. They destroyed communication hubs, blinding the Empire's coordination. They struck the personal estates of Zarkesh nobility, making the war personal for those who thought themselves untouchable. The raids were surgical and brutal. Human soldiers appeared from nowhere, struck hard and vanished before reinforcements arrived. They knew Zarkesh security protocols because humanity had studied them for decades. They knew the layouts of bases and facilities because human intelligence had mapped everything. They had prepared for this war without even knowing they were preparing. The psychological impact was devastating. The Zarkesh people had always felt safe. Their empire was strong. Their military was powerful. Wars happened on distant worlds, not in their core systems. But now human soldiers appeared on Zarkesh worlds themselves, striking targets the military could not protect. Nowhere felt safe anymore. The Zarkesh Senate demanded action. The military scrambled to respond. They assembled their second fleet, 2,000 ships, and sent them to crush the human homeworld. It would be a statement. Humanity had hurt them, so they would destroy Earth itself. They would show the galaxy what happened to those who challenged the Zarkesh Empire. The fleet never reached Earth. Human forces intercepted them in deep space. The battle was supposed to be one-sided. 2,000 Zarkesh ships against what intelligence said was maybe 500 human vessels. But when the Zarkesh arrived at the coordinates, they found 5,000 human ships waiting for them. The battle was a massacre. The Zarkesh fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from dozens of species watched recordings of the battle where humanity had destroyed 2,000 Zarkesh warships in a single engagement. The numbers seemed impossible. The tactical precision was frightening. This was not the humanity they thought they knew. The Tholian representative stood, his crystalline body refracting light across the chamber. We must consider mediation. This war will destabilize the entire sector. We should offer to broker a peace agreement. Ambassador Nari's image appeared on the communication screen. She was still on Earth coordinating the war effort. Her expression was cold. There will be no mediation. There will be no peace agreement, not yet. The Zarkesh murdered 48,000 unarmed civilians, including 40,000 children. They did it to send a message. Now humanity is sending one back. We will accept nothing less than total Zarkesh surrender, followed by war crimes tribunals for every leader involved in ordering the attack on Station 7. The Zarkesh representative slammed his appendage on his desk. You cannot do this. We are a sovereign empire. The council must intervene. Nari's smile was thin and sharp. The council had centuries to stop the Zarkesh from committing atrocities. You did nothing. You watched them enslave entire species. You ignored their war crimes. You tolerated their cruelty because it was not your problem. Well, now it is your problem, because humanity is not going to stop until justice is served. And if any species interferes, if any nation aids the Zarkesh, if anyone tries to protect them from consequences, they will share their fate. We suggest everyone stay out of our way. The communication ended. The council sat in stunned silence. Many species had grown comfortable with the galactic status quo. Wars happened, but they followed certain rules. Empires conquered, but they also negotiated. There were always compromises, always ways to end conflicts without complete victory. Humanity was rejecting all of that. They were fighting for total victory, and they would not stop until they achieved it. Some species considered intervening anyway. The Nexari sovereignty had mutual defense treaties with the Zarkesh. They debated whether to honor those commitments. Their military analysts reviewed the data from recent battles. After 3 days of analysis, they announced they would not be honoring the treaty. The risk was too high. Humanity had revealed military capabilities that were beyond anything in their intelligence reports. Fighting them would be suicide. Other species came to similar conclusions. One by one, the Zarkesh's allies abandoned them. Trade agreements were canceled. Defense pacts were voided. Nobody wanted to be on humanity's bad side. The peaceful gardeners who had spent 2 centuries caring for orphans had transformed into something terrifying. And the worst part was that nobody had seen it coming. 3 months after the destruction of Station 7, humanity had deployed over 20,000 warships. The hidden shipyards continued churning out vessels at impossible rates. But these were not crude, hastily built ships. They were sophisticated, well-armed, and crewed by humans who had trained for scenarios they hoped would never happen. Every human ship captain had studied warfare as part of their education. It was considered cultural knowledge, part of understanding humanity's history. Now that historical knowledge became practical skill, the Zarkesh Empire was being systematically destroyed. Human fleets appeared in Zarkesh systems, defeated the defenders, and moved on. They did not occupy planets. They did not enslave populations. They simply destroyed military assets and freed any slaves they found. Then they left, moving to the next target. It was efficient and brutal. Admiral Soman coordinated the campaign from her flagship, a massive dreadnought called Never Forgotten. The hull was inscribed with names, all 48,000 names of those who died at Station 7. The ship was a memorial and a weapon, a reminder of why humanity fought. She studied tactical displays showing the current state of the war. Human forces had destroyed or captured over 8,000 Zarkesh vessels. They had liberated 200 slave worlds. They had freed over 50 million enslaved beings, and they had only just begun. Admiral, we're receiving communications from the Zarkesh High Command, her communication officer reported. They're requesting negotiations. Soman did not even look up from her displays. Ignore it. They can surrender unconditionally or they can keep fighting. Those are their only options. The officer hesitated. Admiral, they're offering reparations. They're offering to return all captured species to our custody. They're offering territory and resources. They want to make a deal. Now Soman looked up. Her eyes were hard. Tell them that if they want to make a deal, they can start by surrendering every official who was involved in ordering the attack on Station 7. Every admiral, every general, every politician who voted for it. Turn them over to face trial, and maybe we'll consider talking. Until then, we have nothing to discuss. She returned to her tactical displays. The Zarkesh kept trying to negotiate because they did not understand what they were facing. They thought this was a normal war, the kind where both sides eventually got tired and made compromises. They did not understand that humanity was not tired. Humanity was angry, and humanity would not stop until the job was done. Commander Hyun and his special operations teams continued striking deep inside Zarkesh territory. They had evolved beyond just freeing slaves. Now they were hunting specific targets. War criminals, officers who had been present at Station 7. Politicians who had voted for the attack. Humanity had compiled lists, cross-referenced with multiple intelligence sources. They knew who was responsible, and they were coming for them. One by one, Zarkesh leaders vanished. Some were found dead in their homes. Others simply disappeared, only to turn up later in human custody. The Zarkesh government tried to protect their leadership, but human operators were too skilled. They bypassed security that had been considered impenetrable. They infiltrated facilities that were supposed to be safe. They completed missions that should have been impossible. The psychological warfare was deliberate. Humanity wanted Zarkesh leaders to know that nowhere was safe, that their decisions had consequences, that you could not murder children and expect to sleep peacefully in your bed at night. Fear spread through the Zarkesh ruling class. Some fled to remote systems, others went into hiding. A few committed suicide rather than face capture. Young Ho's cyber warfare teams had evolved their operations as well. They were no longer just disrupting Zarkesh systems. They were broadcasting propaganda directly to Zarkesh citizens, videos of freed slaves thanking humanity, recordings of the attack on Station 7, showing exactly what their leaders had done, lists of war criminals and their crimes, evidence of government corruption and lies. The Zarkesh government tried to block these broadcasts, but human hackers were too good. The information spread across their networks like wildfire. Zarkesh citizens began to question their government. Protests erupted on multiple worlds. Some Zarkesh military units refused orders. The empire was fracturing from within. 6 months after Station 7's destruction, Admiral Soman's fleet arrived at the Zarkesh homeworld. They brought 300,000 ships. The number was staggering, impossible, and yet there they were. The Zarkesh High Command stared at their displays in disbelief. How did one species build 300,000 warships in 6 months? The answer was that humanity had not built them in 6 months. They had been building capacity for 200 years. Every colony, every station, every outpost had industrial facilities. When all of that capacity turned to warship production simultaneously, the output was beyond anything the galaxy had imagined. Humanity had hidden their true strength for 2 centuries, and now it was fully revealed. The Zarkesh military tried to defend their homeworld. They had 100,000 ships in system, their last major fleet. It was the strongest defense they could mount. It was not enough. The battle lasted 3 hours. Human tactics, human weapons, human coordination were all superior. The Zarkesh fought bravely, but bravery could not overcome such overwhelming advantages. When the battle ended, the Zarkesh homeworld lay defenseless before the human fleet. Orbital defenses were destroyed. Military bases were in ruins. The government huddled in bunkers waiting for the bombardment they were sure would come. They had destroyed Station 7 without warning. Surely humanity would do the same to them. It would be justice after all, but the bombardment never came. Instead, Admiral Soman broadcast a message to the planet below. People of the Zarkesh homeworld, this is Admiral Soman of the Terran fleet. Your government murdered 48,000 unarmed civilians, including 40,000 children under our protection. They did this to intimidate us, to show that compassion was weakness. They were wrong. We have defeated your military. We have destroyed your fleets. Your empire is finished, but we are not monsters. We will not kill your civilians. We will not destroy your homes. That is what separates us from your leaders. We do not make war on children. She paused, letting that sink in. However, there will be consequences. Your government will surrender unconditionally. Every official involved in the decision to attack Station 7 will face trial for war crimes. Your empire will be dissolved. The Zarkesh government debated for 3 days. Some wanted to keep fighting. Others recognized the futility. Their empire was shattered. Their fleets were destroyed. Their allies had abandoned them. Human forces controlled their homeworld's orbit. They had no moves left to make. On the 3rd day, the Zarkesh High Consul emerged from the government bunker, hands raised in surrender. Admiral Soman's Marines took him into custody. Over the following week, every Zarkesh official connected to the Station 7 attack was arrested. Some tried to flee. Human intelligence knew where they went. Special operations teams retrieved them. There was no escape, but humanity did not simply execute them. That would have been easy, and humanity was not interested in easy revenge. They wanted justice. Real justice. the kind that the galaxy could witness and understand. The trials were held on a neutral station, presided over by judges from multiple species. Humanity insisted on this. They did not want the galaxy to think this was just human revenge. They wanted the galaxy to see that the Zarkesh had violated laws that everyone supposedly respected, laws against attacking civilians, laws against genocide, laws that had been written but never truly enforced. The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings of the attack, communications logs showing the orders, testimony from survivors. The Zarkesh officials tried various defenses. They claimed military necessity. They claimed the orphanages were a strategic threat. They claimed they were following orders. The judges rejected every excuse. The law was clear. Attacking unarmed civilians was a war crime. Targeting children was a war crime. The Zarkesh had choices. They chose murder. Now they would face consequences. The sentences were carried out publicly, broadcast across the galaxy. Every species watched as those who had ordered the destruction of Station 7 faced justice. It was a message. You could not commit atrocities without facing consequences. Not anymore. Not with humanity watching. The Zarkesh Empire was formally dissolved. Its territory was divided among the species it had conquered, with human peacekeepers overseeing the transition. Every slave in Zarkesh space was freed. Compensation was paid to victims from seized Zarkesh assets. It was the largest redistribution of power in galactic history. Commander Daiho, promoted to fleet commander after his defense of the Sanctuary Network, oversaw the occupation of the former Zarkesh capital. He walked through the streets where citizens had once chanted for conquest. Now they were quiet, subdued, trying to understand their new reality. Some glared at him with hatred. Others looked away in shame. A few nodded with what might have been respect. He stopped at a memorial being built in the city center. It listed the names of species the Zarkesh had enslaved over the centuries. Millions of names, billions of lives destroyed. The Zarkesh had built their empire on cruelty, and now that empire was dust. A young Zarkesh approached him cautiously. She could not have been more than 15, still a child by their species standards. She held a small bundle of flowers, the kind that grew on their world. "Are you going to kill us all?" she asked quietly. Daiho looked at her. He saw fear in her eyes, but also something else. Hope, maybe, or at least the possibility of hope. "No," he said gently. "We are not going to kill you. We are not going to enslave you. We are not going to do to you what your leaders did to others. We are going to teach you a better way. If you are willing to learn." She held out the flowers. "These are for the children who died. I saw the videos. What my leaders did was wrong. I am sorry." Daiho took the flowers. "Thank you. It takes courage to admit when your people have done wrong. That is the first step toward making things right." She nodded and walked away. Daiho watched her go. The sins of the fathers should not be visited on the children. The young Zarkesh deserved a chance to be better than their leaders. That was what humanity believed. That was what the orphanages had always been about, giving children a chance. 1 year after the destruction of Station 7, Director Myung stood at a ceremony. She was older now, and the stress of the war had aged her further. But her eyes still held warmth. Behind her, a new structure floated in orbit of Kepler 442b. Station 7 had been rebuilt, larger and stronger than before. The new station was a memorial and a promise. A memorial to those who had died, a promise that humanity would continue their work. The central hall held a wall inscribed with 48,000 names. Every person who had died defending the children or being the children. Visitors could touch the names, remember the faces, honor the sacrifice. Myung spoke to the assembled crowd, which included human officials, freed slaves, and even some young Zarkesh who had asked to attend. Station 7 was destroyed because it represented something dangerous. It represented the idea that different species could coexist in peace. That children could be raised without hatred. That the cycle of violence could be broken. Our enemies thought they could destroy that idea by destroying this station. They were wrong. She gestured to the new structure behind her. This new Station 7 stands as proof that you cannot kill an idea. You can only make it stronger. We rebuilt this station not just as a memorial, but as a functioning orphanage. Children from across the galaxy will be raised here again. They will learn, grow, and become the future. And they will remember the 40,000 who died so that they could live. But humanity has also learned something, Myung continued. We learned that compassion without strength is vulnerability. That mercy without justice is foolishness. That peace must be defended. So these new stations have defenses. Real defenses. And humanity will never again allow our children to be threatened without consequences. She paused, looking out at the crowd. We do not seek to be the galaxy's conquerors. But we will be its conscience. We will be its defenders. And if necessary, we will be its executioners. We will not fire the first shot. We will always seek peace. But if you force us to fight, we will not stop until justice is served. That is the lesson of Station 7. That is the promise of humanity. The crowd was silent for a moment, then applause broke out. Not just from humans, but from the freed slaves. From representatives of species who had suffered under the Zarkesh. From those who finally felt safe knowing that someone would stand against cruelty. Young Terry, now 8 years old, stood beside Myung. The little Vrelian girl had survived Station 7's destruction because she had been on the main station that day visiting friends. She had lost many people she loved in the attack. But she had not lost hope. Grandmother Myung, she said, tugging on her sleeve. Will it be safe now? Will the bad people come back? Myung knelt down, her old knees protesting as always. She hugged the little girl. The bad people who did this are gone, and if anyone else tries to hurt you, humanity will stop them. You are safe, little one. I promise. Terry hugged her back. I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to help children too. Then you will, Myung said. And you will do it better than I did because you will have learned from my mistakes. You will know that kindness must be strong, that compassion must be defended, that peace is not the absence of conflict but the willingness to fight for what is right. Across the galaxy, the message of Station 7 spread. A new saying emerged among the different species, whispered in 100 languages. Never harm a human's children. It was said with respect by some, with fear by others. But everyone said it. Because everyone had learned the same lesson. Humanity had revealed its true nature, not peaceful gardeners or fierce warriors. Both. They were a species that cared deeply about life but would fight with terrible efficiency when that life was threatened. They showed mercy to those who deserved it and justice to those who did not. They were compassionate but not weak. Kind but not foolish. The galaxy adjusted to this new understanding. Some species drew closer to humanity, seeking their protection or alliance. Others kept their distance, wary of provoking them. But everyone respected them. The days of dismissing humanity as soft or naive were over. The Galactic Council offered humanity a permanent seat on the Leadership Council. Ambassador Nari accepted but made a statement. Humanity accepts this position not to gain power but to ensure that what happened to Station 7 never happens again. We will use our influence to protect the innocent and hold the guilty accountable. We will continue to run our orphanages and care for the galaxy's children, but we will also maintain our military strength. Not for conquest, but for defense. Not for aggression, but for deterrence. She looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. The age of tolerating atrocities is over. The age of looking away while children suffer is over. The age of letting might make right is over. Humanity will ensure this. We do not ask permission. We do not seek approval. We simply declare it. Any species that commits genocide, that enslaves others, that harms children will face consequences. We will give you chances to stop. We will offer diplomacy. But if you refuse, we will act. That is our promise to the galaxy. Some representatives looked uncomfortable. Others nodded in agreement. But none objected. They had seen what humanity could do when pushed too far. They had no desire to test those limits again. On Earth, humanity returned to its daily life, but changed. The factories that had built warships began converting back to civilian production, but not all of them.